Hi guys, I'm making this video before I go on a 4-day camping trip where I'll have no access to social media, any technology whatsoever. So I think that's probably going to be a very good thing for me. In relation to this vote, the referendum coming up, yes or no, it's brought up a lot of emotions for me, this debate, and I think it should. Currently I'm experiencing a fair bit of anxiety, to be honest, about making this video and a lot of the stuff that I'm seeing on the media, the various forms of media lately. And I wanted to talk about something that I don't think is being discussed, and I think there are some differences in both the camps that isn't being discussed, and that's what I wanted to touch on today, to try and help people understand why the people are so different on this matter of an Indigenous voice to Parliament. Speaking as a yes voter, I'll cover that first, including the first Australians in the Constitution. To me, it's a no-brainer to recognise, a culture and a people, a heritage of our own country that spans 65,000 plus years. If I'm truly going to call myself an Australian, I would want to honour that in our Constitution, a foundational document for our nation. I think the people who wrote the Constitution initially and the people who did a lot of degrading and dehumanising and disregard for the first Australians in the writing of our Constitution, and a lot of things that were done back then by people that I don't identify with. And I think that might be an issue still in Australia, that people identify with those colonisers, invaders, and I think the problem with that is that because they disregarded this country's truth, that has a continuing effect on the minds of other people, and foundational documents like the Constitution represent their beliefs, their thoughts on this country and the Indigenous people of this land. But that doesn't need to be us. We don't have to identify with those people. We don't have to live in that limited mindset which disregarded and degraded the first Australians. I want to, as an Australian in this day and age, I want to acknowledge our truth, and I want to identify with Australians, not invaders and colonisers that treated the culture and the first Australians so poorly. So their poor example doesn't have to limit my mindset. It doesn't have to limit this country anymore. I hear a lot of no voters saying, oh, well, the past is the past, and that stuff happened and we should just move on from it. Well, that's what I want us to do. To truly move on from that really poor example, we have to disassociate ourselves with those particular people. I was born in the UK. I came here when I was 2 years old to become an Australian. But I don't identify with those invaders. I don't identify with those people that set such a poor example for this amazing country when they came here. When I came here, I didn't want to do that. Yes, I'm a product of our education system and our culture, our society, and yeah, it's been a process of identifying with what the truth about this country, and it's been a process for me. It's taken time and effort, but I can honestly tell you that over the years, my connection to country and the Indigenous people of this country has only deepened, and it's made me feel more connected to the place I call home. It's made me feel more Australian. But I think what gets in the way is that, a lot of Australians understand this heritage and this history that is part of Australia, but they rob themselves of that by staying in a very limited mindset that was brought here by people who wanted to conquer and disregard this country's truth and its people. So I think it's very easy for the No campaign to dig into that. What is, racism in our country? That it's very easy for them to dig into this ignorance and disconnection, and just because a lot of Australians have been brought up not to have that connection to this country, it gives them an excuse to just continue that ignorance. But that, like I said, they're robbing themselves. My true education, my true connection to this country continues to deepen. I see this, so many other countries have identified the first peoples of their country in their constitution. The only reason we haven't done it is because culturally we've been taught not to identify with, regard Indigenous people and their connection to this country, which is our truth. 65,000 plus years of connection. That's a truth. And the more we embrace that truth, the more we're being honest with ourselves, and we're not hiding behind a handed down inferiority complex. It's hard for people to understand that, I guess, because the British conquered, but it was inferior to the connection to this land that has existed for 65,000 plus years. It is an inferior brand of being Australian. It's an inferior brand of connection. It's an inferior brand of humanity. It's denying this country, but it's also asking us to deny ourselves as Australians. So there'll be that missing link, for so many Australians, if this continues. But I think, look, this vote has brought up all of this stuff, and I'm very grateful for it, because we need to talk about what it is to be Australian. Do we want to continue that limited mindset about what it is to be Australian? Or do we want to embrace everything that we are? The heritage of this country, if we're truly going to call this place home, doesn't it make sense to honour and respect our truth as Australians? So yeah, the colonisers did what they did, and they murdered and they displaced and they enslaved and they made culture illegal, and so. But the thing is, to this day, that influence is still affecting how we live in this country, how we connect or disconnect. It's continuing to affect us. So by going back and getting the foundations right, we can stop that from happening. And a foundational document like the Constitution is a chance at doing that. And now there's a lot of fear around that. My understanding is that this is a body of Indigenous people, voted in by Indigenous people, to connect with other Indigenous groups throughout our country on issues that affect Indigenous people. It's to offer advice. It's an advisory body. We've had these type of bodies before, but the problem is that every time one is created, it's kneecapped. It's the next government come in and they wipe it, and we continue to kneecap the Indigenous people of this country by doing that. It's a betrayal. And a foundational document like our Constitution, putting it in there, that can't be taken away by politicians. This is the power that we have in this vote. This is a body that cannot be taken away by politicians, just wiped like they've done in the past. The only way this can be taken out of our Constitution, or this body be removed, is by the Australian people. Now, there's power in that, guys. Think about that for a second. You know, only we can take this Indigenous voice away. And why would we want to? You know, I hear all these fear campaign tactics about they're going to take our land and things like that. It's just straight out lies. Why? What is so scary about Indigenous people having a voice and real discussions and knowledge being passed down about Indigenous people and what their needs are? You know, you just need to look at the statistics. The fact that our Indigenous people are the most incarcerated people in the world, doesn't that scream that we're getting this completely wrong? And our perspective of what it is to be Australian is completely wrong. To prevent this opportunity is to limit ourselves and our country's true potential. We are far more than we've been led to believe. And this is an opportunity to acknowledge and identify with this country on a far deeper level than we've been asked to before. There are still those powers that be that want to drag us down into that colonizer invader mindset and that disconnection from this country and its original people. And they're spending billions of dollars, guys. They're spending billions of dollars to convince not just, you know, right-wing rich people, but the fringe groups, the conspiracy groups. So they're blanketing, you know, so much money at this, you know, to keep Australia down, to keep Australia limited and not connected, you know. Why would Murdoch do this? Why would the IPA do this? Why would these powerful people be fighting against? I mean, for me, you know, you just do the opposite of what those groups want to do. I mean, it's a pretty, you know, there's a history there, you know, of them taking advantage of us, you know, and they're scaring us, you know, they're scared us about immigrants, they're scared us about all sorts of things. This is a tool that they're using. It's a political football for them to gain more power and more votes at the next election. You know, this is what they do. They specialise in this, divide and conquer. You know, you just have to look at Murdoch's record to recognise that. You know, it's, you know, I could go through the other things that we've lost because of this propaganda and these billions of dollars that these types of people use to divide us. But that's going to create a whole different conversation. But, you know, there's a history there. If you don't know about the IPA, look it up, you know. But so many Australians are being manipulated at the moment, and it's very easy for those powers that be to do this. You know, they're experts at it. And I guess what I'm asking all of you, all my friends and family, or anybody who's watching this, please don't believe the lies. You know, this is an opportunity for all of us, you know, to identify with a country that includes the First Nations people, that embraces our true heritage, you know, not just the colonizer mindset, you know, which is so limiting for us. I think that's everything I wanted to say anyway. Look, I'm gonna spend 4 days with no tech, and it's gonna be great. You know, I don't know if I'm gonna want to get back on social media when I get back, to be honest. But I am really passionate about this, obviously, and I hope that kind of clarifies for you guys what's actually going on in Australia at the moment. It's the difference between having that colonizer mindset or one that's open and loving and accepts the truth. You know, the only dividing that's going on here is by those special interest groups that want to keep our consciousness down and disconnect us from the truth of this country. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you've lasted this long, we're coming on 16 minutes, so well done. Please vote yes. Lots of love. Thank you.